Hey, we are two Star Wars nerds, and today we're reading from a really cool book, the Star Wars Archives. This is about the original trilogy by Paul Duncan. There's two versions to this book. I'm not sure how different they are. There's this one, and then there's one that's seriously like this large. It's a giant table book, and I don't have the kind of money to drop like a couple $100 and buy that big one. But this, to my knowledge, it's all the same content, maybe a little condensed. Incredible book. Yes. But in particular, we're going to be talking about the Force, Vader's redemption, the importance of fathers and sons, the hero's journey, a lot over a few pages. So
buckle up.
This is going to be good. And this book is hundreds of pages long, but let's get into this. So just so you know how this works, when you are seeing like this right here, it's the speaker. So typically it's George and
George Lucas is the one who created Star Wars.
Just if you didn't know. But it's George and Paul Duncan going back and forth in this conversation. And it's pretty cool. But this is about Return of the Jedi. And
my favorite.
The very end here, obviously, the scene. What's cool about the book is that they go through and kind of talk about scene by scene, production, story, elements, all sorts of stuff. But George, he says, you have the light side and the dark side in you. Talking about the Force. So already, when he, even just recently at the Cannes Film Festival, he said, like, really, I'm the only one who understands the Force. That's not really something you hear much about. That you have the light and dark side in you. Your job as a human being is to try and keep those things in balance. So you don't go all over to the dark side. It's not possible to go all the way over to the light side, so people struggle to keep on the light side because it's harder. That's what a Jedi is. That's super interesting. Mm-hmm. A Jedi is someone that is pushing the light side as far as they can. It's not one thing or another. It's like an applause meter. If you're turning to the dark side, then the applause meter is going over to that side. But if you can control your emotions, say, this is the Force's will. This is natural. You can't do anything about it. And just accept it. Then you can get back to the light side. Otherwise, you'll be in pain forever.
Wow.
So he's already touching on a lot of things about like forgiveness, bitterness, all this, and anger. He gets into that. But right off the bat, I mean, because you said, hey, let's go. You wanted to go into this blind. So what are your thoughts even so far? Because there's a lot just there.
I think it's really cool. Just seeing what was in his mind as he was creating this, because so often it's just like, oh, the Force, this mystical something, but it wasn't just this mystical power to George. It was so much deeper. So it's cool to have that perspective.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's in this book or not, but he talks about like basically the personal Force and the cosmic Force, where he's saying like the Force is in everyone, but then there's this like higher level of like cosmic Force, which you have like people with higher midichlorian counts and like Force users kind of a thing. But he's like, everybody can be trained in it, but this is when he's talking about kind of this good and light side stuff. Very interesting. But going on here, obviously there are people that just do the easy thing, and the easy thing is to be angry, which turns to hate.
Yeah.
It's not an active thing, it's a passive thing. Being angry with someone is a passive thing. You have to work out to not be angry, and if you don't work at it, let's go to this next page here. You'll just be angry the rest of your life. Bitter, angry, and of course that leads to suffering. It's the bad side. On the other side, you have to be diligent all the time, like a Buddhist monk or a priest, to forgive and accept the fact and turn the other cheek. That's one of the reasons why you can't become attached to people or things, because that's the way to selfishness, and that's also the way to get angry. You have to be able to lose them and realize that's the nature of life. Nobody lives forever. Nothing is perfect.
Dang.
And this is the underpinning of Star Wars.
Yeah, it's so much deeper than I ever thought.
This is the underpinning of the story, and this might be odd for you. We are it's a little complicated, but we are leaders in our church, and we do all sorts of different things. Lead worship, teach, all these different things. And I have a sermon coming up, actually. And so I've been kind of thinking a lot about this. And
you gonna quote George?
I'm not going to quote George. For every now and then I reference Star Wars, but I don't preach Star Wars. I preach the Bible. Let me make that clear. But I had this thought. I love old things. And 200-300 years ago, some of these old things that I have, that was somebody's commonplace possession or prized possession. And I have no idea who owned it. The very thing that some of these people maybe fought so hard for, it's actually not even a memory in their family anymore. Like, it's totally gone. And there's this attachment that we can have that I think does lead, to this total dark side. To be fair, George isn't writing a Christian story by any means. But there's, when you get into Joseph Campbell and the hero's journey, and even, the hero with 1,000 faces, this underpinning mythology, you get to things like this where it's like pretty fascinating that he didn't just want to tell a cool sci-fi story. He wanted to literally tell a modern myth in his own words, which is fairly interesting.
It's timeless.
It is. That's the beauty of it. It was timeless until 2012, but nonetheless. Paul Duncan, his response. He said, in terms of Luke's story, he loses his aunt and uncle. He loses Ben. He loses Yoda. And then at the end, he loses his father. This is not a happy-go-lucky story, but at the same time, you can see that he's grown up. He's matured, and he has become an adult. He has become someone who is self-aware and can deal with his life, which is just so cool.
Yeah, I never thought of that perspective, like how much he loses like so quickly. Like obviously I saw it and I knew that, but then just thinking like his aunt, his uncle, Ben, Yoda, it's like 5, that's a lot.
And I've had this idea for a video. And maybe you guys will hear more of these kind of like meta ideas that we have. An idea for a video I had was like he's ready to take the next step in the journey, right? Because he's this spirited farm boy who's ready to leave the planet. He wants to have these kind of otherworldly adventures, but he's afraid to leave. When he makes the decision to leave, he was getting ready to abandon everything that he knew. To have this search, having his father's weapon, he's like, there's this longing for more, and this longing, this pulling of destiny. And when he comes across his aunt and uncle dead, he had already made the decision to leave. And so then just something deeper pushed him. Like he'd already made that decision, and then now like there's no going back. Like you literally can't leave. So I've had this idea to look at like Luke's hero's journey and this perspective, because then it's like the role of the mentor, like what Obi-Wan played, and the role of the sage with Yoda. Anyway, let's get back to this because there's still some more good stuff. So George Lucas. Okay. Our son, this little blurry guy, woke up and the hugest burp of his life.
All over mama.
All over mama. So that's the shirt change. Anyway.
And we got a blur now.
Let's pick it back up with George. George says, in the first film, he's on the verge of losing his aunt and uncle. He's growing up. He's 18, 19. He wants to leave and go off and follow his destiny, which is a kind of death. Super interesting. He's sad about his aunt and uncle when they are killed by the stormtroopers, but as Ben says to him, he couldn't have made any difference. If he had been there, he had been killed too. So this is a rougher departure than he thought, but it's the one that he was contemplating and the one that he was willing to accept, that for him to go and have his life, he had to separate from his caregivers. So he did that, which is the beginning of the hero's journey, says Paul. George Lucas, right. When he loses Ben, he freaks out. He's depressed and all the things that you would be. But Ben has put that idea in him that things happen naturally. And that there's also this thing that's never explained, which is that he allowed himself to be killed. He didn't really die. He disappeared. There's more to this than just a death. Later on in the movie, Luke hears Ben say, "Use the Force." It mitigates that loss a little bit. I know that was a shocking revelation.
He's never seen Star Wars.
Never. So this is all new to him. It mitigates that loss a little bit, because Ben because he knows Ben's somewhere, that something's going on. When Luke sees that Yoda is dying, he's ready to accept the situation. He's able to let Yoda die without falling apart. When it's his father, it's sad, but he's learned to allow death to enter his life and accept that nothing goes on forever. It's a reality you have to accept.
Star Wars is deep, guys.
Are you guys picking this up? Like, that's so crazy.
Yeah.
I don't know, just to hear just these concepts of like death and rebirth over an acceptance and like seeing Luke become a Jedi, like going back to that thought that it's learning to like let go and to like push into the light and like accept things. Just so crazy. Paul Duncan, once you see the whole story, it makes sense and it's incredibly moving.
Yeah.
I think on the landing platform on Endor, when Vader says, "It's too late for me, son," this is the first time he calls him son. And it's the moment when Vader becomes human again. Right, like this right here. I don't know what that was, but this right here. This section. That could be a whole series of videos. Like the first moment he calls him son.
Right.
And that's when he becomes human. Like, so crazy to think of.
Yeah.
Like, that's literally, like, many people have talked about this. But that's the meeting of father and son for the first time. Because it was Vader and Luke, and now it's Anakin and Luke. Crazy. And it should have been when Luke was coming into the world. But instead, it's when Anakin is going out. It's crazy.
Oh.
So, George says, that's right. The point is, his son saved him. His son saved him by doing the very thing that Vader couldn't do.
Yes.
Luke wouldn't turn to the dork side. Luke wouldn't turn to the dark side, and unfortunately, that's what Vader did. He couldn't accept death. Anakin wanted to save his wife, but it wasn't possible, except with sort of black magic. The dark side made him feel all-powerful, and all-powerful means I can do whatever I want. I can be selfish. If I want to save my wife out of selfish reasons, I can do that, even though he couldn't because she died. It's a war between selflessness and selfishness. Luke is not trying to get some magic potion. He does not accept the Emperor's offer of come to the dark side, and you can be all-powerful. When Vader sees his son willing to give up his life to save him, kill me. I am not going that way no matter what. That is what turns him. It is the end of Vader's journey to the dark side. Nuts.
Yeah. I know.
So good. So, before we continue with final thoughts, let us know, even right now, as you're watching, in the comments, what you think of, how I'll put it, drinking out of the fire hose that is George Lucas. Because seriously, he drops, like, I think if people could just understand that after watching 1 through 6, you would be able to rewatch Star Wars for a lifetime.
Yeah, honestly, this is just making me like Star Wars more, and I want to go watch like 1 through 6, just have like a marathon.
We absolutely need to. And if you've made it this far into the video, we'll give you a little sneak peek of something that hopefully hasn't happened yet. Maybe it has to soon. We have a friend, a very close friend. She's 21. Somehow, she has not seen a single Star Wars movie. Not a single one. She says she generally knows some things that happen, and she knows kind of about Star Wars, but she doesn't know. And she has agreed to watch all of them and be recorded the whole time and have her raw reaction put up.
It's going to be fun.
So what we're looking at doing is like exposing her to the good stuff, and just seeing like the beauty of like, man, how cool is that? We'll all get to watch someone in real time enjoy this, unless she just absolutely hates it, and then it's like we're not posting that.
She won't hate it.
She will love it, especially when we keep her away from Disney. But let us know in the comments what you think about this. This is one you may just need to, I mean, honestly, buy the book, but you may just need to go back and rewatch this a couple times because there's so much here.
Yes.
But with that, we are two Star Wars nerds, and may the Force be with you always.